I'm Diego Cortez.
Adam Schoenfeld.
This is The Scoop, brought to you by Full Tilt Poker.
Hit show.
And we've got Kathy Liebert back for part 2. She was very interesting in part 1, and she's earned a renewal. And if you missed part 1, it's on Card Player TV. And here we go. That's interesting, though, when you mention about the backing, because I've always thought that backing can be very dangerous. It can be such a double-edged sword, and I've really, very rarely, except for like one-offs, never, been backed. But I know players who've been like long-term backing, and the backer, either they influence them directly, like you say, where they are commenting, well, you should do this or that, or just because they're saying, boy, you haven't really had the results. They're putting some pressure on, and that makes you feel like, well, I better at least have some sort of cash.
This is why I only accept non-poker backers. Seriously, like if someone who doesn't know anything about poker, who just, hey, I'm like, great, but you will not be allowed to make any comments. Well, that's the only way that backing.
I've been on my own for years now, but I remember actually for a while, Eric Seidel and John Giovanni were staking me. And John Giovanni came up to me and said, you haven't been doing too great lately. It's time you better win. And actually, then I won a bracelet. Right after he said that, I wound up winning a World Series event. So that was good. So
it'll influence you. And I won't mention, but there was one gentleman who backed a bunch of players, and he used to sit right at the rail during the final tables, and on the breaks he'd have a comment or two or whatever. And I think, how can you play under this sort of pressure? And I understand as a backer, you want to know, what the players are doing. You want them to give you the results every day. It's got to be like a business. But the flip side is, you can really have a negative effect because you've got to play your own game. The only times I've ever had like a one-off backer, they're like, you just do whatever. They're not watching. They're not asking what my bust-out hand was. The one last time I remember doing it, I remember just bubbling in a big tournament and saying, okay, here's the hand. They're like, I don't want to hear about any hands. So I'm like, that's really the only way to do it. Have you ever backed people as well? Or maybe I shouldn't ask, because then once it's on camera, you might get 400 email requests.
I have occasionally, but to be honest, I really don't have any interest in backing people at this point. It just seems like it's more hassle and headaches than it's worth. And, obviously if they're good players and in the long run they're going to win, but at the same time, like you said, you can go through a down streak. And
now, you mentioned you won the bracelet. Now, that was in the shootout event?
Yeah, that's right. Hold'em shootout. That was 94, I believe. No, not 94. No, 2004.
My God, we weren't
even
born back then.
2000.
That's a bracelet I don't know about from
94.
And tell us how that came down for you. Because I know you had some close calls, and then you really wanted a bracelet.
I considered my game no limit at that, for the last several years, and that was limit hold'em. So I wasn't really feeling as much pressure, I guess. But I got heads up with Kevin Song, and I thought he was pretty good player, obviously, and but I thought
he'd won like 2 limit hold'em bracelets.
Yeah,
he's really tough at that.
Something.
Yeah, for sure.
He had going.
And although he did tell me that he never beat a woman heads up, so that gave me a little more confidence.
Maybe that was in his head.
See, if he's thinking about that, that's an edge for
you.
That's
already that has to be negative thinking.
Yeah, I started off playing really loose and aggressively, and and showing them, oh look, and then I kind of tried to, so I tried to mix it up, and so it worked out.
It worked,
anyway.
yeah.
But not to dwell on it, but you had some runner-up finishes.
Right.
How many? 2 or more?
Oh, I probably
in the World
had
Series.
In the World Series. Yeah.
Maybe 2.
Yeah.
But I mean, when you're runner-up a couple of times, obviously that means you're good enough to win, and you've just come up short where you get the bracelet and all the glory and the whole thing, and second you just wonder what you could have done. So
yeah,
I don't know. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but it seems like that has started weighing on you because people are always kidding with you. Well, almost.
Yeah, I had a lot of seconds in my career. And it didn't. I wasn't really thinking that I wanted the fame, and the glory and stuff like. I mean, obviously winning is much better than coming in second.
Yeah.
But my philosophy had been kind of just, I don't need to be well recognized or I was just thinking that if they don't think I'm good, that's just as well for me. So I was kind of thinking just, make the money. And actually, the first time that I came second in the World Series, I was heads up with a guy that was actually a dealer.
I know.
And we got heads up.
Adam and I have done our research. A dealer who was drunk.
Well, what happened is that when we got heads up initially, I was winning every hand. And I was doing really well. And then they said, "You want a dinner break?" And the guy was like, "No, I don't really want a dinner break." And I was like, "Yeah, I could use a break." So we go on break. And then he starts drinking and stuff like that. And he I was basically winning every hand. And then he relaxes. He says, "You want to make a deal?" So we wound up making a little bit of a deal. So he comes back after after dinner break, and everything changes because now he's relaxed, he's had a few
Right.
drinks, he's not nervous anymore. Before he was
Right.
like, oh, you're gonna win, he's like,
Right.
now he's made a deal, and he's, and then also all his buddies, dealer buddies, came over and started, rooting him on and stuff. So the whole dynamic kind of changed. So the dinner break kind
Say
of
the
really,
least.
Oh, that's
messed
really
me up.
interesting.
yeah.
Yeah,
And of course the blinds went up, and and then it
Right.
became.
that too. But still, you can draw a clear line there where, and we've seen this too, where people either, because on a break they reevaluate or they get some advice or they just calm down or relax.
Right.
But with the drinking too, I mean, generally, the conventional wisdom is obvious, which is drinking is not helpful to playing.
For him, it was
winning
helpful because
poker.
now all of a sudden
But
he
in
was
this
relaxed.
case,
and
the
upset,
edge
right.
where the
Right.
guy's
Right.
nervous and feeling somewhat intimidated or feeling they're an underdog, that is, exactly what you need. And also playing heads up, a lot of people's mistake, especially back then where people were less sophisticated about it, is just playing too tight, not adjusting enough to the fact that
Right.
heads up, you've got to just be aggressive. And in Limit Hold'em, just pure aggression can win. So if the drinking now made him more aggressive and looser,
Right.
that's
So
exactly
kinda
what you
everything-
don't want.
yeah.
If you want to just keep reminding them, it's a big difference between first and second.
Right. I think if we hadn't gone on that dinner break, I probably would have
You'd have 2
won.
bracelets now at least.
Yeah. So that was. But,
Well-
actually, I was almost rooting for him because all the dealers were rooting for him and everything like that. And I
Yeah.
was like, oh, well, maybe.
I mean, the thing is, it's
mean,
unlikely that he's going to win another bracelet, and
Especially
you,
not playing any events.
You're right. You were going to have your chances, and you'll
Right.
have many more chances. I
Right.
see you with final tables every year almost.
See, I give
I didn't know that the bracelet was. To be honest, I didn't know it was such a big deal.
Well,
You
right,
know, I
and-
mean, I didn't think about making a
right.
deal for the bracelet or anything like that.
Yeah,
Even though he
right.
said, "Oh, you're gonna win. Let's just."
a lot of us didn't. And the thing is now, in retrospect, when you're on TV or when there are sponsorships or whatever, just to say, Captain Liebert, World Series bracelet holder, whatever, really gives you an extra oomph, which
Which I wouldn't know
in
about.
those days, you don't really factor that in. It was more like, yeah, it's nice, but you don't think about the marketing aspects or whatever. But Johnny, who beat you in that
Oh, right,
famed
right.
heads-up match, to his credit, the next day he was back dealing, and he'd sobered up, and he knew I'm not going to be winning these bracelets every year, and that was fun and that was great. But I'm dealing as opposed to some dealers who win and who say, well, now I'm going
I'm
to
a
be
pro.
a top professional or whatever.
Right.
So I give credit to that.
Well, actually, that was the second time I was heads up. The first time I was against Max Stern.
With Max Stern, I remember.
Right, in the No Limit.
Yeah.
And actually, that one was unfortunate because I got it in really good. And he'd kind of been playing aggressively and running over me a little bit, and I hadn't really been playing back. I hadn't had anything.
Right.
So I finally get 2 6s, and I'm like, yes, and I move in, which is probably an overbet, but
Yeah.
I was just like, okay, I finally got a hand, and he called me with ace-5. And that was the
And that was
80% of
it.
the chips.
Oh my! The one thing that's very interesting to me in all this is, the vast majority of poker players, they want people to think they're even better than they are, or maybe they think they're better than they are. But a big part of it is even, a losing player, he wants to be thought of as a winning player. A winning player wants to be thought of as a champion. And there's so much. You need a lot of ego to survive in poker. If you don't believe in yourself, and if you start doubting yourself,
I've
you're-
kind of
you're
gone the other
doomed.
way, yeah.
But I think it's fantastic that you say that. In a way, you want people to think you're worse,
Right.
just to keep getting the money. It takes a lot of self-confidence to want that, because I think everyone else just, they want to be respected, whether it's justified or not. But
Right.
They
I
want
mean,
to walk
ego,
in and
I'd like
have
to be
people
respected,
say,
right.
"Oh, here comes Kathy to the table." That's a tough, and I think it's very unusual that you've got enough belief in yourself that you're fine. You don't mind, even staying under the radar with some second place finishes works to your advantage in terms of people underestimating you.
Yeah, I mean, for a long time, I thought that was an advantage, and
That's
people
not
didn't
being
really know.
Adam's philosophy.
No.
We went overestimating.
Right. I mean, when I used to say, "Oh, let's chop it. You take the trophy, whatever,"
Yeah.
because it wasn't important to me. I mean, I knew that I had done well and that I had accomplished it. But I mean, in hindsight, if I had known what was going to happen, and I mean, certainly having more victories would be nice instead of saying, taking the seconds and stuff. But at the time, I did think that being underestimated was an asset and being under the radar.
I think people still underestimate you, and I say that just because, and this is I always think a silly topic where people talk about the female players in poker where there's no
Right.
I wasn't even
difference.
going to bring that up.
But I mean, there are great women players who won in the huge live games, and
Sure.
we have a lot of respect for that. But I don't think anyone's close to you in terms of accomplishments in the tournament circuit in terms of money won and tournaments won and all that.
Right, I kind of have been under the radar somewhat,
Yeah.
and I have a lot of seconds and thirds, which obviously doesn't get as much recognition as first places.
Right.
And I
And
mean,
big
obviously,
TV wins and so forth. So
I mean, I have been on TV a lot because of the WPT and the World Series.
Kathy's on every World Poker Tour final.
the problem is when,
You're
you
on a lot of
win, you don't jump up and yell enough, or
Right.
you don't have a trademark dance.
Yeah, it's interesting to say that because the World Series, a lot of times the camera was on me, and I'd lose a big pot, and I would have no reaction. I wouldn't say anything. Or they
Right.
followed me out of the room once when I got busted out of the World Series with a huge beat. I got caught runner, I flopped this, and I had no reaction. They were like looking for me for a comment, and I
Right.
didn't say anything. So they don't bother to show that because that's not interesting.
Right.
But I wasn't looking for a lot of TV time or
Right.
being a big,
I think maybe another aspect to it too is, I mean, I've played against you for many, many years since our youth,
Right.
and
Kathy's still young. Somehow you.
right. Oh, gray hair.
Yeah.
But one thing is that it's really hard to put a thumb on your game, which is a testament to to why you've been successful over a long period of time, which is that you don't have a game where people can say, oh, she's just always trying to run you over, or she's just tight, and I mean, you have. It seems like you just have a game that.
Yeah. What the hell is your style?
Yeah. What? Tell everyone so they can.
Yeah.
But even your style of play kind of is under the radar. It's more subtle, where it's not like obvious, like.
Well, there's been times when I played too tight and too conservatively, and there's been times when I played too loose and too aggressively. So I mean, hopefully I do mix it up, and I try to play the correct for the moment. But yeah, I mean, I'm sure I've made errors in both directions, and sometimes you over adjust, or sometimes you make mistakes, or But so I do try to mix it up enough so that if you realize that you're kind of getting pegged a certain way, or people, like once I realize that people think I'm kind of a little bit on the solid side, I might try to bluff them more. Try to.
I once
Make
tricked
adjustments.
Kathy into thinking I was solid.
Yeah.
You remember the incident?
I do.
And this
Let's hear
wasn't
it.
this wasn't even intentional. It just came the way it came, and just the timing of it was so funny. We were down in
Yeah.
Tunica. And she's still mad.
Hilarious.
So
Kathy's still bitter.
Kathy's sitting to my left, and there was a hand where I raised, and a guy, Kathy's out of the hand. Someone in later position re-raised, and I showed Kathy like pocket nines, and I dumped them. So then, one or two hands later, I raise, and now Kathy moves in on me.
Right.
And it was for the right amount. The stacks were, I believe, and I had, pocket eights, and I called her.
Right.
and she had ace queen or something, and she was out, and she said, "Great, thanks for showing me the nines that you're willing to fold." Is that fairly accurate?
Yeah.
That's what I
that
like
is.
about Kathy. She'll carry the grudge.
Yeah.
Wow.
And this has been like for over. That was 30 years ago.
Yeah, there are a few beats that I do remember that I still kind of carry
But
with
this was
me.
just a
That's true.
standard hand. But it's just funny that I.
Just
showed
the
you
fact that Adam had set you up like that, like I'll show her the nines, and then I'll get
Right,
her to move
yeah.
that
It
little
wasn't.
light on me.
Yeah, it just worked out.
Still
perfectly.
advanced strategy, and on the break, hey, we won't play too hard against each
I was
other.
so. I was so. No, it was so. Yeah, I was so tricky that I trapped her into a coin flip. It wasn't like I got her in bad.
You think? I mean, we've talked about playing and traveling all this time. When we do our follow-up interview in 10 years, you think it'll be more of the same, or what do you have any specific plans?
I think I'm going to cut back on playing as many tournaments, but I think my results are actually going to get better because I've really worked. I mean, I'm constantly working on my game and thinking about it, and I've learned how these young players, the internet players, play more now, and I'll probably stick to less events, but the bigger events.
Yeah.
And I do think that I'm overdue for a few big wins. So
I like that kind of talk.
I agree with that.
I like that thinking.
Yeah.
It's been a pleasure having you on. We've wanted to have you on for a while. We know we'll keep seeing you in your frequent appearances and in your travels. So thanks for joining us.
Good.
Thanks for
My
joining
pleasure.
us
Thanks,
on
Kathy.
The Scoop.
Pleasure.
Brought to you by Full Tilt Poker. Write to us at thescoop at cardplayer.com.
Two bracelets. Awesome.
Well, these aren't easy to win. I remember this one like it was yesterday. My opponent had me down to my left. Sorry. Anyway, it's down to my last few chips. So I had to call.
We play at FullTiltPoker.com.